Hey guys, just real quick before we get into this particular episode, I just wanted to let everyone know that this is our 50th episode of the Third Impact Anime Podcast, which is kind of insane. I never really thought that we would, stick with it long enough to make this much content, but, here we are, 50 episodes later, and, the podcast has gone through some small changes. It's gone through some really big changes, but we've stuck at it. We've been doing it. We've been doing this podcast since March of 2017, and now it is June of 2018. So just a little over a year. And we've made it to 50 episodes, and I think that's really, really awesome, and I just want to say just how much I appreciate everyone out there who has listened to this podcast, everyone out there that has come to any of our panels, and to all of my, excellent friends and colleagues and collaborators that have worked with me on this podcast to make this happen. And I really could not do any of this without you guys, and I just appreciate every single one of you. Just thank you. Thank you so much for helping me make this podcast a continuous thing, and helping to make it, better and better every episode that comes out, because I think we've come a long way from our early days. The podcast has definitely changed. There's certain things that we've tried to make better since the beginning, and I think that we're always trying to find ways to make this show better for us, more fun for us, and more fun for you guys who are listening. And I hope that we can continue to do that, and maybe push it forward to another 50 episodes or so, or maybe even longer. But I just wanted to say that real quick before we start into this episode, which I just now finished editing, so I'm very excited to get this out, because it's a topic that we are all really interested in, about a show that we all have a lot of affection for in Otaku no Video. So I just wanted to say that, and just thank you again, and yeah. Hi there, and welcome to the Third Impact Anime Podcast, where we talk about anime, video games, and conventions, with a healthy amount of existential dread mixed in. You can find out more about our podcast by following us on Twitter at TI_anime, or just like us on Facebook to not see our posts, because that's just how it is now. Thanks again for stopping by, and enjoy the show! Hey guys, and welcome to this week's episode of the Third Impact Anime Podcast, where we talk about anime, we talk about video games every once in a while, we talk about convention culture, and a bunch of stuff related to all the cars that are outside of Sully's apartment right now. How are they doing?
Just redo that one?
Absolutely not. I'm totally leaving that in there. How are you doing this evening, my wonderful co-host Sullivan?
I was going to do like a fun, I'm back joke because I haven't been on in a while, but the motorcycle just totally stole my thunder, and I'm very upset now. And I wish you would redo it.
Just go for it. We'll pretend it didn't happen.
I await your letters of encouragement, dear listeners.
Excellent. You can send those to @Calvacun on Twitter. As far as my other co-hosts, we've also got Tobias. How's it going there, my friend?
I'm doing pretty great. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. Better now that I'm here with you, lovely gents. And how are you, Mr. Bill?
I am wonderful, and thank you for such kind sentiment to us all.
Well, I try my best to spread the love to those that deserve it, and you all deserve it.
And speaking of spreading love, we're going to be spreading some otaku-shaped joy this evening on this episode of the Third Impact Anime Podcast. We're going to be talking about Studio Gainax's 1991 OVA, Otaku no Video. And I know that all of us are very excited to talk about it. This was Bill's first time checking it out, but Tobias, Sully, and I had seen it many times. It's probably one of our favorite things from Studio Gainax as a whole. I mean, definitely from my perspective as well, it's one of my favorite things. It's one of their more obscure titles that I really enjoy. But before we get into that, I guess we'll just talk a little bit and figure out what everybody's been up to. So I guess we'll start off with Tobias. You and I recently did a convention together. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yep, we were in Huntsville, Alabama for HamaCon. Just what was it, last week, end of June?
Yes.
I guess second to last weekend of June. By this point, we'll probably have the podcast already out for that, so you can listen to our experience there a little more in depth. But it's always a pleasure, to go down there. I've only started going to HamaCon after I made my exodus from Alabama, ironically enough. But I definitely feel like it's worth the trip for me. I get to meet a lot of people, network, hang out with really good con friends, and yeah, even get to reminisce about the good old terrible days of living in the humid swamp of Alabama.
I was really glad that most of that convention was indoors because we kind of avoided having to deal with that for the most part.
Yeah, that was a good experience.
It was, but I will have to say that, and we'll be talking more about that in the actual Hamapod. But the venue for that was just so pretty on the outside. It was like man, I wanted to see some gondolas go down that little river thing with all the koi fish.
I'm sure there were.
Probably. But yeah, other than HamaCon, you've been up to anything, watching anything, playing junk?
Well, I think this last we recorded, I recently moved to the other side of town. Not a really a huge move, but it was still an experience, a draining experience in a lot of ways. So kind of readjusting to that. I just downloaded the new Octopath Traveler demo for the Switch.
Nice.
I played 5 whole minutes of it, but I really enjoyed it. I really like what they're doing by combining these like graphical filters against the classic pixelated style. I think it's really, really pretty. But I'll have to save my reviews for the actual gameplay when I actually play the game.
It just occurred to me that it's been an entire E3 since we've recorded an episode. I don't think we've recorded since E3. I think that Animazement pod was like the week before.
Yeah, it kind of wiped us out.
Yeah, it did. And then prepping for HamaCon was kind of like a full thing, so we didn't really have a chance to record much. But I guess it feels like forever at this point, but E3 was fun. I know, Bill, you did a write-up about E3 on the website, and if people want to check out Bill's personal opinions about E3, they can go check it out there. But other than Octopath Traveler, was there anything that stood out to you from E3?
So I've only watched 2 of the, like press conferences, because I've kind of got a point where, I don't know, the whole production, I've just kind of grown out of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm sorry. It's a time commitment, and it's just easier to just read a general like overview article at this point.
Yeah, and I just kind of, I don't know, like I like playing games, but I'm not into it as much as I was like in college, where I had to keep up with the news at all times. So it's just, I don't know, like I guess I've done it too many times where it just is hard to feel fresh. But insofar the things that I did see, I did watch the Bethesda presser. That was fun to watch, fun to kind of make fun of in some ways.
Was the Banshee back?
They had who did they have? They had they had the party hard guy. What's his name? Alex WK.
Andrew WK.
Andrew WK. They had Andrew WK on, and he was banging, but the audience was dead. They just kind of like watched him with dead eyes as he's doing his whole party hard routine. So that was maybe not fun to watch in a traditional sense, but very, very interesting to see how different they reacted.
That was one of the many frustrating parts about the Bethesda press conference where I just wanted to bang my head against the wall.
Yeah.
All I know about like the only presentation I watched was the Nintendo one. But my friend Austin, not related to this Austin,
Hi.
he and some friends of ours, we watched the presentation 1 or 2 years ago, and there was this woman from the Bethesda conference who just screamed every single line she had, and now she's become what we refer to as the Bethesda Banshee. Just
So, I mean, as far
screeching
as
woman
She
hailing
and the
things.
she and the flute guy need to team up. That would be amazing.
So, I mean, as far as that went, I mostly laughed at it and I really enjoyed it traditionally. I'm glad they finally are doing Elder Scrolls 6, but it's going to be like next gen hardware for we actually get it. So I'm not getting my hopes up too much.
That was that.
We'll
Thank
see.
goodness.
We'll see how it turns out. But I'm glad they actually moved away from doing Skyrim yet again.
That was a now in development announcement. It was ugh.
Yeah, so it's going to be like 5 years before we get the next trailer, and even then it'll be like a pre. But other than that, I watched the Nintendo one as well. I tried to watch most of it at work, but I really enjoyed the first thing they showed was that mecha game. I can't think. No, Deus Ex Machina.
So wait, is that related to the Ex Machina franchise that we know of already, or is this something else?
I don't think it's related. I'm not really sure what you're referring to, but I think it's brand new.
Bill, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, the Deus Ex franchise from.
Oh yeah.
Deus
That's
Ex.
what it's called.
No. It is not Deus Ex for sure. But it's a mecha, like an anime mecha game that they've got. They have Shoji Kawamori, the guy that designed the
Oh,
mecha
right.
Macross on it, and I can't remember the guy's name, but the director for Armored Core, I believe,
Mhm.
is the director for this game. So they have a great team behind it. Aesthetically, it looked really interesting. So I'm looking forward to that for the most part. Other than that, they showed mostly a bunch of new Smash Brothers, and I kind of, fanboyed over that a little bit. But I barely played any of the last generation, and I think I've just kind of grown out of Smash for the most part. But it was still fun to, to see Ridley and to kind of see what they're going to be doing with the next game.
Yep. I mean, I'm not a person that really gets ugu about Smash either, but I mean, it's cool to see Smash still being like cool,
Yeah.
and people enjoying it, and like that's another thing. Like if there's a really solid video game franchise out there that I may not necessarily care about, that still like lifts all ships because it gets good video games made. So.
And
Yeah.
lastly, they didn't have it during the main press conference, but afterward they had the Treehouse segment, and they were playing some of the new Pokemon Let's Go for the Switch,
Mhm.
and that was a really fun watch as well to see how they're going to be combining the traditional gameplay with the Go mechanics.
Mhm.
I really think they've struck a really cool medium with what they've done with that, so I'm actually looking forward to that game.
But all of that combined together pales in comparison to, I know guys don't care, but the Kingdom Hearts 3 announcements.
Wait, the
were
what?
So the Kingdom Hearts 3 announcements.
The Kingdom what?
The Kingdom Hearts 3 announcements.
Wait, there's a third game?
Yes, Tobias. There's well, actually, this will be the 8th game in the franchise.
It will actually be the 2.8 to the over 2.
Tobias, be careful! Don't get him started, or else we're gonna be
we're gonna.
down.
Well, actually, but yeah, I'm super hyped to have Frozen there, and Pirates of the Caribbean, and my boy Remy from Ratatouille, because I love that movie so much. Kingdom Hearts 3 is going to be beautiful, and I'm just so excited. I'm excited to see my very special son Sora, the Key Boy, return with all of his beautiful friends, and my heart breaks for Aqua. But if anybody follows me on Twitter, which you should, at BebopShock, you've seen me already retweet probably like 3 to 4 times per day since E3 something Kingdom Hearts related, which is basically business as usual. Bill, was there anything in that you wanted to talk about? Because I know you wrote your whole article and everything, but was there anything that you wanted to bring up about E3 that you're hyped for?
Most of everything that I was hyped about was written in my article, which you should go read at thirdimpact.wordpress.com.
Third Impact Anime.
Anime.wordpress.com. I've said that wonderful website so many times. Sometimes I blank out.
It's fine.
But My main two things that just brief mentions. One, hype for Bowser Jr. because Bowser Jr. is best boy of Smash, and also rip the memes of Kingdom Hearts now getting released. I'm happy for you, but I'm sad that the memes are gone. They're dying because it's finally getting released.
Well, it's not out yet. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
Well, I love the fact that the fact that it got delayed till next year has then spawned a new amazing meme that no, it's still coming out in 2018, but it is coming out in the 13th month of 2018, which is such a Tetsuya
Hearts.
Nomura thing to do.
It is, yeah.
I guess, but just like the now in development tag is now going to shift over to Final Fantasy VII, the remake, which even Nomura said we announced this way too early.
That's very true. He said that a couple years ago about Kingdom Hearts 3 as well, but I'm just glad that that game's happening and 7 remastered is happening, both of which look like so good.
I'm going to call it now. The FF7 remake is not going to come out on the PlayStation 4.
You're thinking it's going to be a PS5 or whatever?
I read an article where one of the things that didn't really get announced at E3, but there's an implication, is that a lot of the new games we're seeing are actually running on prototype next-gen hardware. So like a little bit of Elder Scrolls 6 that we saw, like that is definitely next-gen.
I don't doubt it, because basically even PlayStation admitted like we're nearing the final years of PlayStation.
Yeah. So we are definitely. I'm sure at this point that's the reason we didn't see more FF7 remake is because they're definitely moving it over to the next gen.
Man, I hate that though, because it feels like the PS4 is not that old. Like, what is it? Like 5 years old?
See, Austin, this is what we call getting old.
Also, that's the usual console cycle. It's every 5 to 6 years. So
man, I feel like it used to be like 10 years.
That's because the PS2 ruined everybody.
Yeah,
you got a point. It was like a bajillion.
I dream of the days we return to a time where a console will last long enough for me to actually appreciate having it.
Fair enough.
I'm gonna be happy with like a good solid, like the systems coming out like post Switch all last like a good solid decade before they have to be switched out. Oh, I made a joke without knowing.
Hey,
Hey.
Good one.
Don't you want to ask me my opinions about E3? I watched at least one presentation,
I don't care. I'm not gonna ask, but you can go ahead and tell me anyway.
So I have some opinions about Smash Brothers.
Oh,
no.
Here we go.
Okay,
I'm ready to serve up my hot takes.
Okay, so are any of those opinions related to Snake's bottom?
One is.
They
Why don't you
robbed.
say 2 are?
They robbed the poor man. He comes back and he lost so much for his.
Okay,
No,
please go ahead, Sully. You have the soapbox.
Okay, so here's my thing. I am the most casual of casual Smash players, in that to me the idea of competitive Smash is like turning Looney Tunes into a Shakespearean drama. It's reducing it. So I mean, I am constantly having to sift through 1,000 basement-dwelling neckbeards' opinions on wave dashing and L canceling, and whether or not the Final Destination Omega stages are exact replicas to the pixel that are fair for turn. I do not care. But one of my favorite things is they constantly want new characters. We are at, officially, the count is at 65, but with the whole Echo Fighters thing, we're closer to like 68 at this count, because Daisy and Peach are like one character. It's like a weird alternate costume thing, but not a clone. It's weird. It's like we are well past halfway to 100 characters, and they're still like, we want Waluigi, we want K. Rool, we want Goku, and I'm getting to the point. It's like that kid at the store who's like, I want all of these toys, and you get them all the toys, and they play with one single toy, because I know what's going to happen. They're all going to pick 5 characters they're going to play, and 2 stages they consider okay to play on, and they will beat that game to the ground. So I am hoping to every possible higher power that this game just sort of, I am a very bitter, angry person. I'm the old lady shaking her cane for kids to get off my lawn. I want nothing more than to see the melee scene. Don't make fun of me. When I was a kid, me and my brother and sister called it melee all the time. It stuck with me. I want to see that scene die, and that is my hot take. Is I want to see the death of the melee scene just because I want to see what happens next. I want to see the next evolution in this tragedy that is the competitive Smash world.
But did you hear that Mario's in it?
I did. Although I don't know how to feel about Ridley being in it because he is too big and seeing him kind of squished down is weird. Like I'm glad, but I'm like, what price glory?
They put Ridley in there because people on the internet were bitching about it. Where's Ridley? Give me Ridley, please.
I know, and now apparently Reggie is going to tell Sakurai. I don't know if he actually is. I don't know like how much Nintendo America and Nintendo Japan actually do communicate. But he's like, I will make sure that the groundswell of support for Waluigi is known. I'm like,
that's such a weird sentence, you know?
It's been pointed out that like he's in that that like homebrew Smash Brothers, and all of his moves are based on memes, and I'm like, I literally do not understand what he could possibly have for a moveset that was not either made up entirely or just jokes. And again, it's like, do they really want this character? Will anyone actually main him? Probably not. Just like I doubt anyone will main K. Rool if he gets in. Like there are characters I think would be great in the series, and I would be like, hey, if they get in, I think that'd be great. But I really don't see anyone like losing their mind over getting them in. They just want them in for this weird fanboy completionist.
I mean, that's part of the game. I play it like a party game, so I like playing a variety of goofy characters. I don't play competitively at all. So, like, I wouldn't mind K. Rool. I wouldn't mind Waluigi, but I don't really care from a balance perspective.
I guess for me, it's more like the sort of like being spoiled for choice.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because my main is Link, and he's like just one of the first starting characters in every game. So to me, it's like, I know I'm just going to pick the same guy I pick all the time. So I guess I'm speaking from my own experience, but I'm excited. Like I give this grand demonstrative statement just because I like to do that. I really am excited for the new Smash Brothers, and I hope that it kind of lives up to everyone's expectation, and like Austin says, sort of raises all ships, not just people like me who just want to, beat the crap out of, video game characters, but people who want to bet earth money, like actual tangible legal tender over Nintendo characters beating each other with frying pans. So
hell yeah.
Other than that, I'm really excited for Pokemon Let's Go because it's supposed to be very heavily based on Yellow, and that was my first game, and it's
it's all in content. If you should go back and try to watch the whole recording where they actually sit down and play it. I feel like they've really done a good job mixing like the traditional gameplay with Go's paradigm, and I feel like it works better for the general story, I guess, of Pokemon. Like you're not beating up every wild Pokemon you come across. You're just fighting trainers, and I don't know, like it feels more of what it was trying to go for to begin with.
Yeah, I remember as a kid when you watch the anime and then when you play the game, you kind of pick up, or even read the manga, like there's a lot of like discrepancies because you're like, these are in a way, this is the animals of this world, and yet they become your friends after you beat them up. Or like they prey on each other? Like the Pokédex entries sometimes hint that, and then sometimes like no, they just eat berries and rare candy. And I think as we enter this sort of like post Pokemon Go world, I've seen some people like, oh, they're changing mechanics, I don't like it. But for me, it's like it kind of brings it into that real world atmosphere.
No.
It's like,
I think at this point, Pokemon needs a large mechanic change, I think, to be fresh again.
I mean, there's only so many times that you can like beat up the gym leaders and face the team for that region and collect everything.
Yeah, so I played Pokemon since Gen 1, and I really enjoy everything about it. But they are definitely 20-year-old JRPG mechanics that don't really work much anymore.
And I do need to download that Octopath Traveler demo. I'm finishing my education after taking an extra semester to get my minor. and I have been working every day and coming home like at 5 and then doing homework and then going straight to bed and then waking up and doing it all over again. So that's why I sound like completely and totally loopy, is because I did not sleep for the last 2 days with any sort of regular sleep schedule. So I'm probably sounding completely and totally off my nut.
Use it.
I'm using it.
Bill, do you want to interject on any of that?
Just they're probably going to do DLC characters down the road.
Oh
so-
yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not under the impression that we are done hearing about new characters. For like, we are definitely getting more. It's just Ridley was the one they wanted to announce.
So I'm thinking like they're gonna do Waluigi because fans complained enough, and they'll probably also do a cool add-on would be Simon Belmont or Alucard from Castlevania and Shovel
Oh.
Knight
Oh,
you
Shovel Knight.
or
Yeah.
Shantae, because I love the Shantae series.
Yeah.
Or maybe what's his name? Solaire. Because there's that Solaire amiibo, you know?
Yeah. I think if nothing else, Shovel Knight's probably the safest because of the amiibo. But yeah, Solaire is like right behind them.
Yeah.
That would be I'm just gonna sell my Switch if they put Solaire in the Smash Brothers.
That'd be so hilarious.
Done.
And I'll buy it. I'll buy your Switch from you.
There you go. You can main Solaire. Use his up
Praise
top.
that son. All right, guys, are you all ready to move into our discussion for today on Otaku no Video?
No.
All right, well, I will take that as a firm yes, and we are going to move into our discussion about this. But first off, I did want to say that for all of you guys out there who are curious about our podcast and the stuff that we do, we are, like I said, Third Impact Anime. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Third Impact Anime. You can find us on Twitter at TI_anime. All of us have individual Twitters as well that we will plug at the end of the episode. But if you guys like either the panels that we put on at conventions or the podcasts that we do online or the articles that we write on the website, we would really, really appreciate it if you guys would pop on over to our Facebook page and give us a star rating and a little short review if you'd like. Those things are really helpful in us understanding like what our audience likes, what our audience doesn't like, and they sort of just help us in general become better panelists, better podcasters, and better people at the end of the day. But that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on and reach for the stars with our discussion of Otaku no Video.
働き荒野一人ひた走る者まだ見ぬ世界あるか希望を抱いて信じる者はただ光る情熱熱く燃えたぎるぜ誰にも止められない心のいつの日か巡り合う愛の真実この世界の何もかも俺のもの友情で結ばれた熱い絆よ邪魔はさせない我が道行くぜ戦え戦え戦え戦えTATAKAE Otaku.
So, Otaku no Video is a 1991 two-episode OVA by Studio GAINAX, the very famous studio behind shows like Neon Genesis Evangelion, Fooly Cooly, Gurren Lagann, and probably the favorite studio of both myself and Tobias, Studio Trigger excluded. Otaku no Video was directed by Takashi Mori, who joined Studio GAINAX after Gunbuster, coming off of working on projects such as Kimagure Orange Road and Ranma 1/2. After Otaku no Video, he would stay on to work on Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, GAINAX's first television series, and then would eventually move on to work on projects such as Gunsmith Cats, Giant Robo, and eventually Eureka 7. Otaku no Video was written by Toshio Okada and Hiroyuki Yamaga. Both of these gents are founding members of Studio Gainax, Okada being the creator and screenplay writer of Gunbuster, and Yamaga being the creator and the director of Royal Space Force: The Wings of Honiamis.
And of course, we can't go that without mentioning Okada was also the Oda King.
Yes.
So.
Yes, the Oda King himself. Ken Kubo, the main character of Otaku no Video, is heavily, heavily inspired by Okada himself. So this is like his weird, very romanticized autobiography, if you will. We have character designs by Kenichi Sonoda, famous for working on Bubblegum Crisis and Writing Bean. The main voice cast for this includes Koji Sujitani as our main character, Ken Kubo. Sujitani would go on to play Captain Tyler in the series The Irresponsible Captain Tyler.
I can see it.
Yep. And he also plays Miroku in Inuyasha, among many, many other roles in his career. So we have Toshiharu Sakurai as Tanaka, our second main character. He would go on to play Hansen and King in Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water. And funny enough, he is the official voice of Shaggy in all Japanese dubs of Scooby-Doo.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's incredible. Hino is voiced by Shigeru Nakahara, who has and continues to voice Android 17 in pretty much every iteration of the Dragon Ball franchise. Ueno is voiced by the quite famous Kikuko Inoue, who played Belle Dandy in Oh My Goddess, Kazumi in Ranma 1/2, Electra in Nadia, Lust in Full Metal Alchemist, and Starsha in the new space battleship Yamato 2199. Like I said, this is a 2-episode OVA. The entire thing comes out to around probably about an hour and a half or so.
Right.
And It was released by Animigo in the United States on VHS, DVD, and most recently in a very, very nice Kickstarted Blu-ray, which Tobias backed, owns, and can talk about in just a moment.
You're welcome, everybody.
Thank you, thank you. And it can be streamed on either Midnight Pulp or VRV, but with VRV, you have to have it premium. I think on Midnight Pulp, you can watch it like for free if you just have like a regular account. All right, and that's basically the production background on Otaku no Video. And Sully, would you like to basically tell us what the narrative of Otaku no Video is about for those that may not have seen it?
Kubo is your everyday Japanese college kid. He plays tennis, he goes to class, he has a girlfriend. But one night he runs into his friend Tanaka from high school. Tanaka is a hardcore otaku who ends up luring Kubo into the otaku world where he decides he will become the Ota King. The second episode follows him as he decides to build his own figure building company and tries to overtake the market while fighting his rival for both the company and the affections of his ex-girlfriend.
Nailed it.
Also, they go to outer space.
I mean, yeah.
As you do. I mean, that's the ultimate otaku dream, is to make it to the sea of stars. For sure.
That ending is so non sequitur when you get to it.
It is. I don't think it's supposed to be literal, but then again, it is Otaku no Video, so...
Well, as we have learned from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the best movies end with everyone going into outer space.
That's fair.
That is a fact.
Can't argue with that one. So I guess we'll start off our discussion by talking about how each of us individually figured out about Otaku no Video. And Tobias, you probably have the longest history with this particular title, so why don't you go ahead and tell us how you came by Otaku no Video for the first time?
Sure, yeah. So back in my day, it was just one of those notorious things that you kind of, everyone had to watch, on the forums back when we were, BBS forums before we moved to social media. It was just one of those notorious things that is, an anime about anime nerds. So yeah, eventually we did get around to finding a copy and just checked it out really early in my anime club experience. I watched it again right at the tail end of that. I showed it to a new generation of nerds, and I again just recently watched it for this podcast. So I've only seen it about 3 times so far.
And what around about what year or so did you figure about it for the first time?
I mean, I watched it for the first time in probably like 2005 or 6. For the second time again in like 2010, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, this year in the year of our Lord, the hell world that we live in now, 2018.
And what was your initial impression of it the first time you watched it?
I mean, the initial impression was it was always intended to be kind of a jokey thing. Like, it's just kind of a fun, kind of poking fun at nerds, but also kind of, celebrating nerd culture as well. And this is back when nerd culture was just becoming part of the mainstream. There's still not a time where you really admitted to watching anime on a public level. Video games were just becoming mainstream enough to talk about with, the original Halo, with everyone playing Halo. So I was we were already in a transitioning period where nerd culture was, the new hotness. So it was kind of a, mix between this parody that you were supposed to intend to laugh at these goofy guys, but also, kind of enjoy it as well, being a newer anime nerd myself.
So what about the people that you like watched it with? Because you said you watched it in like anime club, right? Was everyone else like pretty receptive to it? Did they like it, or were they just like, ew, this is old?
I mean, as far as I know, they were receptive to it. It's always been kind of more of a jokey thing, I think, for most people, especially with my club viewings. It was, with the whole plot and with the portrait of an otaku segments that are obviously meant to kind of poke fun at nerd culture and otaku culture. It was very easy to sort of just dive into laughing at these people rather than just kind of celebrating, I guess.
Cool. So, Sully, how did you get introduced to Otaku no Video for the first time?
Through you. You recommended it to me, and I watched it last year, probably about a year from now. That was back when I was living in my old apartment, and I just really fell in love with it. I think it's probably one of my favorite anime films now, and I've watched it maybe 3 or 4 times since then. I turn it on kind of as a comfort food sort of deal, and something about it. Me and Bill discovered in preparing for this while we were just chatting before recording that we had very different opinions, and I look forward to a very spirited debate. But I see and I acknowledge the parody and the self-defecating nature of the OVA, but at the same time, I think it's this sort of tribute to the power of community, the power of people who come together to do something with their passion, and it kind of is this sort of love letter towards what it means to be in a group with friends. And so I guess that's my personal take, is I see all of the parody, but I kind of cut beneath that to see the sort of hopeful, optimistic message of the power of a group of people who are passionate and share a goal. So I guess that's why it lingers with me so much. And even though I'm not as storied of a fan as maybe Tobias is, why I think I kind of have this sort of soft place in my heart for Otaku no Video.
I think I largely agree with that sentiment, but we'll be getting to those weeds in just a moment. But I discovered it probably through doing my initial research for my first Studio GAINAX panel that I did probably about 3 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
Was that like Animazement 2014 or something like that? Whenever I met you for the first time, Tobias.
Ichiban 2015, but yeah, I mean it's still about 3-4 years.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Now that you mention it, I don't think I did it at Animazement that year. So yeah, it was that Ichiban Con. But yeah, I had found it then, and I checked it out. I watched it. I think I found like a used copy of like the 2003 DVD. That like you can find copies of that so easily. Like they're everywhere. For very cheap. Like I think you can order it directly from Animigo for like $8 or something like that.
It's
$9.99. There you go. And yeah, that's how I watched it initially. and I just found out about it through like I was hearing about the Kickstarter, but it didn't really mean much to me at the time because I'm like, oh, I've never seen that. That's interesting, I guess, but I sort of like blocked it out of my mind. And then once I was doing the prep for making that panel, I realized, oh, this is kind of like the GAINAX story in sort of a very fantastical yet distilled format. So I'm like, I really should probably check this out before I do my panel on it because it has so much stuff in there to like gain that perspective and gain that sort of like, this is the essence of GAINAX. This is sort of how they think about themselves, at least in their first generation. This is sort of like the culmination of everything in that like Daikon era, moving on into like the Evangelion era, and then so on.
I think that's really interesting that for my experience, I watched it way before I even GAINAX as a separate thing. Really, it was just a talking to video as of itself sort of carried its own I guess notoriety. But to hear you like talk about, well, I was a GAINAX fan first, and then just happened to stumble upon it, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, because it's kind of like you in the sense of like whenever you first put together the puzzle pieces of like, hey, this one studio worked on all these favorite things of mine. How interesting. Yeah. Since it's funny, kind of worked in the opposite. Like Otaku no Video was one of those puzzle pieces that you then put together. But for me, it was a piece that I found along the way.
Right.
So yeah, that's neat. But I guess Bill, you probably just picked up on it from osmosis from the three of us. But had you heard about Otaku no Video before we started blathering about it?
I heard of that name, Otaku no Video, just because that name is so prevalent, and it can basically be modified to do anything you want with it for meme purposes. And I heard about the Kickstarter when that was going on, but this is the first time that I had watched Otaku no Video.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I guess we'll start out our discussion by talking about some of the individual characters, and I guess we'll start out with Kubo. Tobias, do you want to provide some more context to where the character of Kubo comes from? Like, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but do you want to go into it a little bit more?
I mean, I think I've got a slightly different perspective than you guys. At least what you said earlier. I feel like the Okada stand-in, the Okada Mary Sue, is Tanaka, actually. I think he resembles, like physically, he resembles Tanaka, and Okada look a little more similar, I feel like, than Kubo. And
you know what? That's so true now that you mention it.
Yeah, and Okada is very much more like, if you go back and watch Blue Blazes, like Okada is more of the crazy hyper nerd. And I feel like Tanaka starts off as he definitely wants to be like an Oda King, even if he doesn't actually come up with the idea. I feel like it's only Kubo, later when he's motivated by the things that happen that he really wants to rise above. And sure, Tanaka is more of this passive, follower, I guess, to Kubo's ambition. But I feel like initially, like Okada definitely to me feels more like Tanaka than Kubo. As far as Kubo himself, I don't really know if he has a direct analog. I feel like honestly the casts themselves are just kind of stand-in for generic tropes. The only one that's I feel like close to referenced really is Tsurumaki, the Night Owl character, who is of course named after Katsuya Tsurumaki, who worked on this film.
It's interesting that you pointed that out because looking at what Okada did like in real life and his sort of persona back in those days, it does more fall in line with Tanaka. So do you think like Kubo is supposed to be just sort of this amalgamation of like that hard work and guts spirit that GAINAX has, maybe?
Possibly. I think he's just kind of a generic anime stand-in, to be honest. He's kind of there to resemble that shift between the normies and recapturing this love of your youth. Because you look at the old GAINAX crew, and a lot of them were still doing sci-fi stuff in college. So most of the GAINAX crew was pretty much Tanaka, and they never really stopped doing these things, really. So Kubo, I feel like, is more of an everyman character. He's supposed to relate to the person watching that it may be used to more, again, using this term loosely, normie mindset,
Mhm.
and rediscovering the fact that yes, there is a culture that still does quote unquote research on these nerdy things like anime or military or cosplay or special effects. I feel like he's just more of a blanket stand-in character than he is meant to resemble one particular GAINAX staff member.
Yeah, and it's hard and unwise to necessarily like if you know a certain character is based on like a certain like real life person, you also have to remember that they are not that person.
Right.
They are they take on some of the characteristics of that real life person, but at the end of the day they are a fictionalized character that is written by someone who is writing a screenplay for a character. They're not going to have all the nuances or necessarily the consistencies or the general attitudes about everything that real actual person would have. That's why like certain biopics are, you're supposed to take it as like a fictional representation of this person, not necessarily that person themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's definitely an important thing to remember, even though there is a lot of sort of um, biographical pieces of Otaku no Video. It's mostly just it. I would dare to say it's less biographical, as it is more just like GAINAX sort of like pumping up their own ego a little bit, but in a
yeah, for
in a,
sure.
in a way that's not necessarily like egotistical necessarily. It seems like very tongue in cheek. Like when there's those scenes where Tanaka is showing Kubo the clips from like Daikon 4, and he's just like, this was created by some of the most genius animators in the world.
Yeah, they're going over specifically, and even later when they're going over like Macross, they talk about like they mention Ano very briefly.
Yes, they
Like Ano's
do.
animation is so great. I'm like, he's standing over somewhere, like making them put that in the script.
Yeah, it's so funny, but like it doesn't really come across as like being so genuine that it's like, ooh, gross, you guys are so
Yeah.
like egotistical. It's just funny. It's like genuinely funny with those little tiny jabs, and I think that stuff is made funnier if you know what they're talking about. But I don't know, guys, like this is another question too, like is do you think that this can be enjoyed for people that are not like super neck deep into anime or otaku culture?
Well, I think even if you're someone who watches it without knowledge of Gainax or their history, or even, I mean, there are so many references that are made to anime that, like, even if we as English speakers had seen it, we might not understand that they are directly lifting a line from a Japanese anime that had been translated a certain way. Or, I mean, I know I'm always thrilled when they have the cosplay scene, and I'm like, "There's a Yatterman." Um,
It's
I think
Lum.
yeah, I love that there's, the other sort of main girl whose name escapes me. She cosplays as Lum, and that just thrills me every time I see it. But I think even if you haven't been that deep in the culture to recognize all of the references, I think just like I said, the passion of the story kind of comes through. You really, I think even someone who's not into anime at all, if this was like an introductory anime, I would use it to be like, this is the sort of culture behind anime that can exist, that maybe doesn't exist anymore or in this current place and time, but this is what kind of brings people into this world. Because Kubo starts out as a quote unquote normie, it kind of is like an Alice in Wonderland sort of, he falls into this world and acquaints himself with these people and kind of humanizes them and sees them and becomes one of them. And that's kind of the end goal, is he wants to otakunize everybody. He wants to make a world of people. And I think that doesn't necessarily have to mean like I want an anime world so much as I want a world of people who are passionate about something.
Bill, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think for people who aren't well versed in the references, I think this is a good historical piece of anime culture at the time, just with the references like Lum, or there's some references to Yamato or Lupin the Third, and just kind of
Lots of
what
Char.
was,
Gundam.
yeah.
A lot of Gundam references, actually.
Mm-hmm. One,
And-
what was it? The shark quote that they did a couple times, like
One does not care to acknowledge the mistakes of one's youth.
Yeah, that.
and just
Um,
kind of the disparate aspects of fandom at the time. Like I love that they're in a line to go see
Do you remember Love?
do you, no, I thought it was they're going to see Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind.
Well, I think that shows up later, but the main one I think you're talking about where that actually shows them waiting. Well, maybe you're right. No, maybe you're right. I think they were showing cells or like Sete from Do You Remember Love? Maybe.
they were, but I also want to say that they were in line for Nausicaa. Like I don't remember.
Okay, yeah, that must have been it.
Because they definitely, the dude showed up with those Macross drawings, and then
That's it, yeah.
and then
Yeah,
they also, like, I think the title card after that sequence was something about like the Wings of Honiami is coming out, which was pretty shortly after Nadia, maybe like a year later.
Okay, yeah, that must have been it.
Either way, I guess my question was more so like, can Otaku no Video be enjoyed by people that are not like otaku?
They're not already.
Yeah, like if they're not already like knee deep in like anime culture, whatever it is that means. Do you think that there's something here that they can appreciate, or is just the whole like idea of otaku like is it foreign? I guess is this something that can be enjoyed if you just like watched Dragon Ball Z as a child and then you watch Otaku no Video? Is this entertaining to you? I mean, I don't know, because I've been, in anime crap, and I understand like the references and the way that otaku work, but I just wonder if it's accessible beyond that.
I personally don't think so, just because oh, go ahead, Tobias.
I was gonna say I actually agree with you.
Just because one, the references can kind of get lost on people, and also for me when I watched it, there was a tonal difference that I was seeing. I was seeing it as otaku is ruining the main character's life and the portrait of an otaku. I didn't see the humor in that. I just saw these people who have become obsessed and have where they're just saying like, you're a loser. When was the last have you had any sexual experiences? And maybe it's because I don't speak the language, or just the way it was presented tonally wise, especially in the first episode. It just seems that it was self-reflecting kind of a hatred of what they're into.
Right.
I totally hear you on that, because the first time that I watched this, I was really unsure about whether or not those sequences were supposed to be real. Because I didn't know anything about it, so I really didn't know. I was going into this almost totally blind. Like, all I really knew was the name of this thing is called Otaku no Video. It was a GAINAX thing. ... So initially I didn't know if they were real or not. So they really did like strike me as very strange and very sort of voyeuristic. And it's, I would argue that the humor there is very much like dark humor, but it is very difficult to pick up on the tone, like you said, because I can't tell sarcasm when I'm listening to another language. Maybe if I were a native Japanese speaker, I could pick up on the way that they're delivering these lines, and maybe that makes a difference to these scenes. But it just felt like it hurt. It was very strange. It made me feel uncomfortable, especially on that first watch through. Like, watching it again most recently, I didn't feel that way, because I knew that they weren't real, and I knew that they were supposed to be like exaggerations. And the one with the American is hilarious. But yeah, like I totally hear you on that, Bill, like 100%.
Yeah, like, I didn't know that they were planned out by I think they were mostly people who worked at GAINAX who are in the portrait of otaku.
They're all people who worked on Otaku no Video, if nothing else.
Which, if you don't know that, you think they're real, and
yeah,
I think some of the humor just I felt that it was more dark. Like, is it funny that I'm seeing there's two portrait of otaku no videos of people masturbating? I don't think that's that funny.
Not really. I think that was definitely done a little bit for shock value, for sure.
I guess, but it became more of a I get it now as a joke when they got to the second episode. But the first episode, it just made me like, oh, this is very much an Ano self hatred kind of
Yeah.
where it
The Lulu jokes have not aged well at all.
Which ones?
I know that there's like the pie graph of like what are you interested in, and one of them's like schoolgirl fetish, lowly fetish.
Yeah.
That is one thing that like when I see it, I'm like, oh god, I'm so uncomfortable. Like even though this is a joke, I'm like I do know these are real. There are real people they're making fun of, and I have to confront this.
I guess there's a lot of the things in Otaku no Video that just goes to show like fandom has changed, but in a lot of ways it stayed exactly the same for better or worse.
Yeah, it's sadly I think while there's humor in just how obsessive people can get, there's a dark undercurrent like uh currently with all the Star Wars fans online being idiots to Kelly Tran who played Rose and
Yeah.
this stupid petition that's going on of we the Star Wars fans are going to take Star Wars back. It's kind of that dark undercurrent of fandom. I'm that's what I saw, especially in the first episode of Otaku no Video, is more of the darker sides of fandom because I don't speak the language and because just the way the tone of the narrator and the way the actors play it, it seemed real to me. And I didn't know that the portion of Otaku sections until after I watched it were GAINAX people.
So would now correct me if I'm wrong, but I will make the assumption that you only feel this way about those live action segments because the anime sections have a vastly different tone.
I don't know. That first episode's pretty dark where he loses his girlfriend. He is basically consumed and where he basically loses his focus. It isn't until he's like, I'm gonna form my own company and he gets really energized. When he forms GP, or yeah, I think it's GP, is when there's more of a tonal shift.
Not General Products.
Yeah.
Yeah. Grand Prix.
Which is a great reference to that was their failed company before GAINAX.
I mean, General Products might have felt it's like overall, but I mean, there's still a lot of fond memories of that company.
You can still get some of that Daikon merch. It's super expensive, but it's out there.
The only things I really liked from the first episode were just like it was a good picture of fandom at the time, and also just the little in references of them watching like Daikon 4 or the Castle Cagliostro poster in the background, and I really liked that aspect and just kind of the different aspects of fandom they showed. But that the first episode I wasn't a fan of. The second episode they are able to translate it just kind of the more like this is played for laughs of just how obsessed Kubo gets really energized and then working on the model kits and then later on when he's in that boardroom meeting is just so absurd. That's when I kind of noticed the tonal shift. But that first episode, the tone to me seems like he's going down a rabbit hole and it's not a safe rabbit hole.
Yeah, and you mentioned the whole like the sort of the catalyst for him sort of like going on this like quest to be the Ota King is the fact that his girlfriend is like cheats on him and then like indirectly breaks up with him and he's kind of heartbroken by that and he like finds solace in like I'm gonna take over the world and make this amazing company and all that stuff. But I'm like, man, in a lot of ways, he kind of brought that on himself.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah. In fact, I don't really know if it counts as she cheating on him, simply because he just wasn't there to like. She couldn't call him, she couldn't talk to him, she couldn't just like hit him on the cell phone and message him on Facebook.
That's so fair.
So like, I don't think it was. I don't think that blaming her initially is not. Now that I'm an adult, now that I'm a little more mature than I was when I first watched it, I definitely relate to her issues as well.
Yes,
I
for
feel
sure.
like her becoming the evil, like, takeover at the end was very cartoonish. Not sure I feel about that.
I hated that. That's probably my least favorite part about this whole thing. I really really hated that plot point. But yeah, you're totally right. So I think that makes Kubo like a lot less, sympathetic as a character, because you see him, he makes all of these mistakes on his own, and then he sort of becomes this like capitalist overlord because a girl dumped him even though it was his fault. So I mean, in the end, like, I don't really, as a character, I don't really like Kubo that much, like,
And
personally.
and the other thing too is just it's really out of date tonal wise in today's climate, because that whole like she dumped me, I'm gonna get revenge just seems it's really icky to me in the climate that we're currently in with the with all the revelations of abuse, and it's just ugh.
Yeah, plus, I mean, if you just think about it for just a second, you will know that Kubo was totally in the wrong about this whole thing. So,
Yep.
um, I
So
guess that go ahead,
I guess
Tobias.
to kind of to key off, because I have some slightly different opinions than Bill, but very similar. To go back to the original question, I feel like the anime segments for this, I would say, would hold up for someone who's maybe just dipped their toe into anime con culture kind of stuff. I wouldn't show it to someone fresh on the boat. This would not be like the second thing you show them after Dragon Ball Z. I don't feel like, unless they're already like into nerd pop culture as a whole, it's definitely a historical look, a goofy historical look at 80s nerd culture, like bubble era nerd culture. As far as the plot itself, I feel like it's very self-serving, and sure, it's very self-aware, but it still goes off the rails with, Kubo, like you said, did bring all that crap on himself. Like, he deserved to get dumped, totally. I'm happy that he was able to find a connection to his childhood and like enjoy these nerd things, but he also did it in a very unhealthy way. And he was he was like a freshman in college, so like he was making pretty common mistakes. So it's just part of his character. But I feel like from that moment on, where he decides to double down on his awful nature, and then just from there, the story becomes this goofy, we're gonna go into space on the gunbuster and take over space. It's from there, it just kind of, you could tell that it's there less as a story or biographical look as it is just to be kind of goofy. I don't know. The more I watch it now, like the older I get, I don't know if I quite enjoy it as much. And as far as the portrait segments go, I think they're definitely tough to watch, honestly. And maybe at first when I saw them in college, being more of like an edgy, paradigm myself, I think I enjoyed them more. Kind of like, haha, laugh at, look at these, they're being nerds, and it was easy to laugh and just forget about it. But now that I think we've come a little bit further, it's definitely more difficult to see those. And I think the language barrier is not quite so much of an issue, because you can see their reactions, you can see the tone they have, and some of them are legitimately funny. Like the guy's in the office, and he says like, so look at this dojin you made, and he snatches it out of the guy's hand. Like, where did you find this? And I think that just kind of transcends language itself. And from there, he puts on the actual mask, the char mask, which is, I think, where the first thing that tipped me off that these are not real, because he just happens to have a mask in his his office. And some of them are really interesting, like the whole selfie thing I found really interesting. The ones that there were a couple that were just really really a little more uncomfortable, because they were obviously there to poke at, like, the guy who's playing the computer games, the H game on his computer. Like, the questions they ask him are, I mean, language or not, like, you can see what they're asking him, and you can see his reaction to those, and it's there to poke fun.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's probably this level like a PSA nature to Otaku no Video, sort of in the
Yeah.
guise of humor. Because for as otaku as the GAINAX guys were and are, like they're not. I would venture to say that they're probably not unself-aware, and they
Oh.
can look at the community that they're a part of, look at the community that they contribute to, and be like, there's definitely some disconnect here. There's definitely some very unsavory habits, some very questionable lifestyle choices that end up really hurting these people in the long run. And I don't know. This just seems like sort of like an aggressive like mirror within the guise of like, oh hey, we're otaku too, and we just want to we just want to make sure that all otaku are like taking care of themselves and are like socially uh healthy and all that sort of
Right.
stuff, but not do it in a preachy way. I guess it's more
Yeah.
like being like, hey man, we're the same, but I want you to live your best life.
And this does come, a couple years before Evangelion, but I feel like that's what like the lesson that Ano took out of Evangelion, is trying to tell otaku through it. It's like, you can enjoy these things, that's fine, but don't obsess over them. There is life outside of anime and nerd stuff, and you got to enjoy that as well. And quit arguing. Now like 20 years later about who's the best girl.
If you're gonna record stuff off television, for goodness sakes, watch it.
I love that guy. He's my favorite.
Yeah.
I record them every day. Do you watch them? Oh no, never. And he says that in such a grave, like, just sort of, oh no, no, never. I want to take my original 10-star review of Otaku no Video and drop it down to 2 stars so I can fit in with the rest of the group.
Hey,
I mean-
I wouldn't say that.
I see these things, and I guess because I really don't care about Kubo as a character, like I see him as sort of like almost like a plot device that we use him to follow the storyline. And I do agree the second episode gets very silly. I really only like the first one, and I'm not a big fan of the live action bits because they're funny, but they kind of take me out of the story. Like they kind of the tone shift is so abrupt and so drastic that I really find myself skipping through them.
Yeah,
I
I
guess-
kind of forgot how many there were just watching
There's
this
a
again.
lot.
5 in each episode, I think. Like there's a lot. But I think for me, what I really enjoy, and kind of the opposite that Bill is saying that we were kind of going for, is like I don't see it as saying, at least the anime saying, what you're doing is necessarily bad. It's just perhaps there's a right and a wrong way of doing it. You'll notice that the otaku they're featured in the live action segment, the portraits, they're all lone. They're all completely by themselves, as opposed to the ones in the anime who are almost entirely in each other's company. And I guess for me, in literally doing a project that involves all of us working together, I see so much of like, okay, this person, this is their specialty, this is what they're good at, this is what they're passionate about, and this is why they're a part of the team, this is why we need them. And that whole like the scene where they're at the movies and they're waiting, I mean, we go to movies together, to anime movies, and we wait in line, and while we're waiting, we talk about the stuff we're watching, and we get excited, we show off things we've gotten. And I guess I see those things with rose-colored glasses of, oh, I see all these beautiful things that just come from people connecting and sharing an experience. I mean, this could be a movie about like collecting thimbles or skiing or
Baseball.
like anything. Like one thing that I complain about is that I get tired of meeting people who I feel are very boring because they don't have a passion for something, and that could be anything, even if I don't personally understand it. I might not understand people who are hardcore into like sports and they paint their body like the team colors it, but I think those sort of people obviously have something if they like are passionate. Like I love the John Waters quote, "Life is nothing if you are not obsessed." So I love this idea of like you can take being obsessed with something and find people who have that same obsession or who are in that same sort of mindscape as you, and you can turn it into something that's very beautiful. Like maybe not necessarily taking over the world with a company that makes Misty May figures, but maybe in making a podcast or writing or just doing things together. Like I feel like if the PSA is get out into the real world, nerds, it also is saying there are other nerds, go hang out with them. You don't have to be like everyone else. You can do your own thing and find other people who want to do it with you.
And I think I can probably speak for Tobias and myself that we are speaking kind of hard on Otaku no Video and the things that we've said already because we really do like it a lot. Like at least from my perspective, because all the things that you just outlined, Sully, like I also completely agree with. Like that, I would say that's probably the secondary and probably the most important message of Otaku no Video is basically what you outlined, that things are more worth doing if you have a passion and b people to do it with. And that's really sort of what a lot of Otaku no Video is a testament to. It's the power of community based around this very genuine, pure passion for particular things. Now, that's not to say that all of the characters are perfect or all of the plot things are perfect or if they got their message across in the, most perfect or best way, but still all of that stuff is very much there. And that's why I still, really appreciate this OVA and I still like it a lot, even with all of the criticisms that I have about it.
Yeah, I don't mean to be Debbie Downer on Otaku no Video. It's just when seeing it for the first time, the more darker aspects are kind of easier for me to notice. While there are positives, like I love how each of them are in have their own specialties, and there's not an elitist attitude amongst the group.
Oh, thank goodness.
And also, I like that there's a female part of the group.
There's two, but one of them doesn't speak.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought there's only one.
Well, there's a couple. There's three. I think three total.
Then there's the girl whose specialty is Bishonen, and you just see her drawing and drinking. I don't know why they didn't do anything with her character. She has like one line, and then she's just sort of gone.
Yeah.
But I love that because most, unfortunately, in geekdom, it can kind of have a boys' club attitude. But that's great that they're just part of the group, and it's not a do you have the knowledge? Do you know about insert thing here? Which sometimes can come about, but I love that they're a part of the group.
Definitely. And I guess my only problem, my only major problem with the female characters in Otaku no Video is just what's her name? Like
Ueno.
The ex
girlfriend. Yeah,
ex-girlfriend Ueno. Yeah, she's just the decision to make her like the mwahaha villain, like assistant to the evil guy that takes over the company is just, I don't know, it just seems petty and out of character. Like if I were writing this, I would be like, she probably just moved on and, went and, got married to this guy, had a kid, and is a very, whatever office lady or whatever. There was never enough characterization of her early on for me to assume that she would do anything else.
Yeah, I think that, to go back to what Sully was saying, the appreciation and the depiction of otaku culture is genuine. I really like it. Yeah, I like seeing the references. I like seeing them delve into different aspects of the subculture. I just think the plot, when you scrape away all the whole museum aspects and just look at the plot, it has a hard time holding up. And I think that the main problem is that it almost aggressively refuses to be introspective. So like when Ueno leaves him, rather than think like maybe I need to study more, maybe I should take a break from watching cartoons all day, he's like, no, I'm gonna be the Oda King. I'm gonna double down on this. And the only reason he's got a company to begin with is the fact that the garage skits just took over as a trend. So it really wasn't because he was like,
and that he abused cheap labor from China.
Yeah, and so like the only reason like he got a company and it made anything worthwhile is because he just happened to hop on a trend at the right time. And that does kind of match the GAINAX story. So we go back to the autobiography aspect. They're not individual characters, but the huge swaths of story are what we're hearing from GAINAX. So with General Products, that was just like Okada's family funded that, and they just happened to fall into place with a lot of the trend at the time. And they just didn't have the financial wherewithal, like the sense later. And I feel like we see that with them. Like he just instantly decides to go to China, stay there for like a year while he leaves his company in the hands of Tanaka, who's all he cares about is nerd stuff. And and I feel like that matches the Gainax stuff because they didn't really have any financial sensibility. Like even Yamaga, if you look at it on the whole, like he's not necessarily the best businessman historically. So I guess that kind of would make sense with that aspect. He comes back a year later after building this huge factory to see his entire business just sold off. And yeah, it's a little self-serving, like as far as the plot. Like, of course, who else are we gonna have as a takeover than the only antagonist we have in the story, who's the girlfriend that left you because she doesn't understand your otaku nature. Not because you make unhealthy choices, but because she doesn't understand you.
The other thing is, it seems like the plot is just going through sheer force of will, like through some logical decisions. Like, why would the CEO of a company stay in China to see his factory get built the whole time? Shouldn't he have, like, I don't know, someone under him watch this factory being built?
One thing I kind of noticed about the company is that Kubo doesn't do anything, and he kind of has everyone else do all the work.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that what a CEO does? Like chief delegator?
I guess. I mean, I don't know.
I do find it hilarious that whenever he establishes Giant X, he ends up, for some reason, I can't imagine why, striking a deal with Gorbachev in Russia.
Yeah.
And then America puts sanctions on him for some reason.
I like the part when he's in China and they finish building it, and he looks out the window, like looking upward like in a propaganda poster, and the other guy there like looks out like, what are you looking at, man? Like
that was so funny.
Can you explain to me why they have those little news bits? So it's like October 1985, the Japanese emperor dies, leading to a succession. I don't understand those news bits.
My assumption was that those were like big, big stories in Japan in those particular times, just to give you that like cultural frame of reference.
I kind of saw it as that, and also this is the world that is going on around these characters who are so caught up in their fantasy world they don't actually see the real world.
Right.
That, and they usually tie into what the next segment's going to be. So they mentioned something about like a submarine being shot down, and the next segment is the portrait that's the guy with the in the forest with the gun otaku.
Yes.
Mm.
Oh, and one little note about the gun otaku. Back in the first part of the episode, like whenever the one guy was basically explaining to him like what military otaku were, he was basically like Kubo was a little bit weirded out by like all these firearms and whatnot. And the guy makes a comment to the effect of like, don't worry, all these guns just shoot pellets. It would be irresponsible to have actual guns because those kill people. And I'm like, why can't American gun culture be like that?
Hell World 2018.
Because our culture is not based on, anime, but John Wayne movies.
It should be.
Yeah, got that right, partner.
I suppose one issue for me is that even though we see the sort of representation with the female characters, like Sato, who I've been calling Hino for some reason, I don't know.
Me too. Thanks for correcting us, Tobias, because we took a little break.
Well, actually,
thank you.
Talking about female representation, got their name wrong the whole time. We are a bunch of terrible men.
In my career. I appreciate it, but it feels kind of like lip service because they don't really do anything in the plot. Like they're just sort of there. And like as much as like women have contributed in fandom, and this might be me kind of like 2020, my 2018 mind of like, oh, well, there's so many female dominated areas like cosplay or certain areas of fan art or fan fiction. Like I was kind of hoping it's like, okay, so she's going to be like representing that part of the community in this, and she's going to be bringing that to the table. We don't really see it, and at least they're not hypersexualized. I mean, we do see her in the Lum cosplay, but that's incredibly tame by today's standards. So, I mean, I don't appreciate the villain being his ex because that is it doesn't even really make narrative sense. And I do love that she could not be the other company head. It had to be her new boyfriend. It couldn't be like, even if you wanted to be like, okay, it has to be somehow related to them breaking up, which is like Austin and Tobias point out is a terrible plot point. It's not even, oh, the person you directly broke up with, did these things at first. It's no, first we have to have some guy who no one cares about, but it's me. I'm me standing next to him is what makes narrative sense, apparently. Which really just kind of bothers me. So I do agree. I do wish there were better representation for the women characters in the OVA, but I guess in today's world where I open my Twitter and I see several waifus flung at me, I appreciate the lack of like GAINAX did not live up to their reputation in this one, thank God.
Nobody is particularly bouncy other than Misty May.
Yeah. And I think that was one of those sort of tongue-in-cheek, like, we know what we're doing. This is part of the joke.
Yeah, pretty much. She was kind of just an exaggeration of a bunch of other popular magical girls combined with the Daikon girl.
And when you talk about the fact that Kubo really does sort of throw himself into it, the others seem relatively normal. Like, there's not as much of an indication of not having any sort of ability to survive on their own. Like, they're kind of like, we do this, and we live in this house together, but someone in that group has to be washing the dishes and doing the laundry. And like, when the company starts up, like I said, he's just telling them what to do, but they're the ones that actually do all of the hard work and like all the logistics. So I feel like Kubo, despite him he kind of lives in the extremes of normiedom, where he is so bland of a character that the name of his tennis team is the Woodpeckers. I'm just gonna let that speak for itself.
Was it really?
Yes, look on the wiki that Animego put out. That's what it says. The name of his Woodpeckers.
That is a ridiculous detail that I could only trust Robert Woodhead to provide.
God bless him. But like, he goes into the extreme of just being so obsessive and so hardcore about it, and it feels like even though he's introduced to this by the others, that they're relatively tame. I mean, it's like I could easily see them being like, yeah, we do this is our main hobby, but like, I have class and I have chores and errands and a life that I have to take care of, as compared to Kubo, who feels completely and totally like swallowed alive by it. I do love also on the wiki for Tanaka's entry, it says, because he's accepted a life of bachelorhood, Tanaka tends to have a more relaxed overall way of life. His clothing, home life, and approach to decorating are generally less strict than that of his friend Kubo. And just the whole, he's accepted a life of bachelorhood. And I am so supportive of that, because we live in an age of like incels and like creepy anime fanboys who just feel so entitled. And I'm like, just accept that no one wants you. No, when you're born, the great secret of life is when you're born, never expect anyone will want to be with you. Just live your life and hope it happens. And then, your waifu will always be there. I feel like
You're giant robots.
He's living the life of like a weeaboo Trappist monk. And I am so supportive of that. He knows.
Well, now he's my favorite character.
Girl, but he is so there for Misty May, and he's like a nun to her religion. So I would like every single one of our listeners who may be upset that they can't get a girlfriend to look to our friend Tanaka and accept a life of bachelorhood and see it as a natural moral good for society.
Yep.
And incels, get off my lawn.
So, like, with your mentioning of how Akubo has this extreme fandom for it, in Otaku no Video and other animes I've watched, it seems to me that fandom is either I have no idea what insert thing is, or I am completely obsessed about it, and that is all I do and think about.
Well, I think that I'm going.
Sorry, and why is it the case? Because in real life, yeah, there's people who that can be the case, but for me, it's like I love One Piece. I watch it every week, and I'll go down a YouTube rabbit hole, but I won't talk about One Piece to you guys every single waking moment of the day. So,
You would if you could, Bill. Oh, my.
No, I wouldn't. Even
I'll
I get
say-
bored of that at some point.
I'll say this: it's writing, because when you write, you have to use the broad strokes, and the most. It's just a stereotype. I mean, in real life, there are otaku who are like that. I will tell a story. I have a cousin. I won't name him or anything. I have a cousin who literally looks almost exactly like Tanaka, like down to the long black hair and the rotund figure in the glasses. And we went to high school together. He was more into the culture than I was. I was very, maybe for my own good, looking at this in this way. I was in a very strict like home environment of like academics and doing things in a certain way and dressing in a certain way, and he wasn't. And when I started getting more into anime, when I was like getting later on into high school, I kind of had to try to interact with him in order to get information. And he graduated high school, has not gone to college, and does not have a job. He currently lives with his grandparents and just plays video games and watches anime all day. And I sometimes kind of cringe at that and like worry about becoming that myself. And the point of the story is to say there are people who they are the target audience for the moral of this movie, which is please go outside and interact with human beings and like live in the real world. So there are people who I can personally point to. I cannot just say, oh, I know theoretically there's someone in the country of Japan who is like this. I know someone in my personal life who is. And I've met people who are so thrown into this world that they have nothing else about them. But I will say for the most part, it's because what's easier? It's kind of, and again, this is me speaking from a personal thing. It's like with a gay stereotype. What's easier, to have the guy who, has the lispy voice and is a drag queen and is very stereotypically flaming and likes musicals and all of this? And I may have just described myself because I'm a stereotype, but in reality, there are people like that. And then there are also people who are on a spectrum of how obviously gay or how much into gay culture they might be. And I'd say the same thing goes for any person who's part of any group. Is there is a certain level of a spectrum of involvement. And I think in fiction, especially like things like anime that paint things in very broad brushes, it's easier to have, in real life, Kubo would be like, oh yeah, I know some of this stuff, or I may have seen a picture of it, and not this like total, like the fact, I almost feel like he would see a VHS tape and think it like, what is this thing? What is it? You use these magic black squares to put moving images. Like, I don't think he would be as out of the water as he is in the OVA. I think that's done for the story of this is someone normal, quote unquote normal, falling into a quote unquote abnormal world. I mean, maybe again, hindsight, living in 2018, the lifestyle of these people, the otaku, it's not that strange or different from ours. I mean, in the land of the internet where everything is documented and everyone feels like their opinion is important, people do the same thing with sports or celebrities or Western TV shows or reality TV or scrapbooking. I mean, the thing is, we are living in the age of the otaku right now. It's just not anime related. We are living in the age where most people have an obsession. And I personally think that that's healthy, because I think people need to have something to be passionate about. It's unhealthy when you neglect relationships like Kubo does, or you go so far into it that you leave reality. But I think ultimately having something that you're passionate about is healthy. And like I said, my favorite thing is John Waters said, life is nothing if you're not obsessed. And I think to truly live life, you need to find something that makes life worth living and surround yourself with those things. And it doesn't have to be just one thing.
And it does, and like you said, like it's the whole balancing act, like finding that right mixture. So like, you being able to be a functioning member of society and also contribute to like particular fandoms or passions that you feel very personally led towards. And a good combination of both of those things lead to a more healthy, more fulfilled lifestyle.
I mean, every single one of us right now have had or have at this moment jobs, school obligations, partners, family members, personal problems. personal projects outside, multiple interests. I mean, I'm not just into anime; I'm into several things. So, I mean, political
Dastardly.
interest. It's
Gas.
that's part of being a well-rounded human being.
Right. And there's a that sort of sparked me and reminded me of one of the Twitter questions that we have, which I'm excited to get to, but we'll leave that for a minute from now. But let me see. So I guess now that we're kind of wrapping up, unless anyone has anything that they really want to bring up, I do have a couple of questions in closing that I want to ask everyone. Anybody else got anything else?
I would say, like, I really like Otaku no Video for it is a timepiece of fandom at the time, and its references to GAINAX. Oh, and the music for it is really good. The theme song will be playing at some point in this wonderful podcast at some point.
I'm going to be looping it throughout the entirety of this episode.
It's going to be blaring at the top, the volume.
You won't be able to even hear us.
But overall, like, with it, some of the stuff to me doesn't really work, and I think it's a bit dated to some degree. So I would say for new people, it's not a great entry. I would recommend it if you're more into the more of a history aspect of fandom, and you're very much an old man want to see older shows.
Yeah, it's very much a product of the 80s and the early 90s in the sense that it's both there for historical purposes, but those sensibilities don't always carry over, 20 years later. So just be aware of that. I will always have my copy, and eventually when Animega releases it on Mindstream, where it beams directly into your brain, I'm sure I'll buy it again. I'll back it there. But
yeah, did you want to talk a little bit about the Kickstarter?
I mean, honestly, I'm more of a passive Kickstarter backer when I do back. I really appreciate Animego and Robert Woodhead's commitment to updates. If you look at a lot of other Kickstarters where they update every month or two with like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot. There's not really an update. Maybe next month. But
sorry, my magic skateboard is postponed indefinitely because my mom said I wasn't allowed to build it.
Yeah, I really regret backing the Magic Skateboard. In all honesty, that probably wasn't a smart move, but it's made me more conservative, about my backing.
Magic School Bus.
Very similar.
It's kind of like Mighty Number 9, the reboot of the Magic School Bus.
Oh man.
But, yeah. But no, I appreciate Robert Woodhead's commitment to updates. I remember going back and just kind of watching. The progress of all the art, the design that you were going through, and all of that. I can't remember details at this point because it was like 2015, late 2016, early 2016. But I mean, it was a nice, pleasant experience. I really enjoy my little box set. I got the Oda King edition. I think I'm a premium backer is technically what it was. I took time to look at all the names at the end of it. So I think I was under the premium section, but whatever. I wasn't the production staff level, the same level like Lawrence Ng was, but unfortunately I like money a little too much to do that. But I know it's nice. It came with a nice Blu-ray with a reversible cover. It's got an art book that kind of looked at through tonight. It's got a bunch of stuff in the art book. I don't know if they sell it individually, but if they do, I would recommend it.
I think that particular edition, unlike the Bubblegum Crisis one, is still available. Like, you can get the Oda King edition, I want to say, still, I think?
$60.
Which is really good. Like, Otaku no Video is not particularly long, but considering what you get for this particular release is very nice. I've seen my buddy Jamie's copy, and Sully, you've seen the same one, and it's rad. It's cool. It's worth $60.
Oh yeah, I would say if you really like this OVA, if you want to, have it, for just purposes of having it, it's definitely worth it.
And I think the one positive that came out was it was kind of the ushering in of anime licensors and production houses realizing like we can use Kickstarter to get products to come over here. So I think to get something that you love over reissued again is always a good thing.
Definitely. All
Twitter
right. Yes, Twitter questions. First, though, I do want to ask everyone, out of all this is kind of me stealing from the Disney Magic Hour podcast because I really like that podcast, and they always, whenever they do questions at the end, they always ask 3, and I'm gonna ask one of them because we've kind of already talked about some of the things already. But what they always ask is, what do you think is the most iconic shot or most iconic scene of the entire OVA? So Tobias, if you had to pick the most iconic shot or the most iconic scene from this, what do you think it would be?
So I've got I've got a cheat here. I think the most thing I recall the most is not a shot, but the movie poster that
Which
has
one?
got the one where they're like in the background, it's all tinted red. You've got Ueno and some random dudes that are kind of laughing at
Yes.
the foreground, which is you've got the main character holding a poster and a I Heart SF bag.
Yes.
You've got Sato in her Lum cosplay, just kind of like, I don't know, like shrieking, I guess. She's just kind of like screaming or something. And you've got the rest of the cast kind of cosplaying various characters in the background. And there's something about like the color choices there. I'm looking at it right now, and it's just something about that is to me very iconic. And I think I like that more than anything. As far as an individual shot, I think the one thing that stands out to me, and this is stupid as hell, but the part in the opening, and the opening is just like a shot of fire, for most of it.
Yeah.
But near the end, where they're starting to gather together, and Tanaka literally flies like off the screen, like that stood out to me, and I can never forget that. That is something just is hilarious.
Nyom. He's doing like a T stance, but he's got like his knees up in his belly.
Yeah,
It's like gliding,
flies.
like a freaking majestic bird. All right, so Bill, what do you think is the most iconic scene or shot that you would take away from Otaku no Video?
Well, since Tobias took one of my answers with the whole intro with the fire to be different, I'm gonna say when it's, what was it, 2030, and they go to their old amusement park, and
Yes.
they realize that it's still working. What's going on? They go in, they're old men. They realize everyone's here, and then they open it up, and they're back to how they are in the most of the show, and then launch off like a Yamato rocket into space.
We didn't even talk about that. Yeah, the thing ends with them creating basically Otaku Disney World, and then 30 years go by, and like the seas have risen so far that like a significant portion of Japan is now underwater, including their theme park. And then they presumably go to visit it, unless it's some sort of weird like death dream vision thing. Yeah. And they like board the giant was that something from Gunbuster, or was that like a Macross thing?
When you first see the idea where they're coming out with it, it looks like the SDF one from Macross. But when we see it, like the shoulder pylons are very much Gunbuster, but its hands are replaced by, I think, like Bill said, like the Yamato. So it's not quite exactly a Gunbuster, but it's pretty much Gunbuster.
Yeah, it's either way. It's a big boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, side tangent. How does an Otaku Disney World, Disneyland work? Because one, you'd have to pay to get to license out all those characters that otakus care about, and you're a startup. So
Kubo bought every single one of them.
Yes, you bought them all with Garage Kit money.
Exactly.
I guess. Man, people really love those Garage Kits, then.
Yeah. Sully, what is the most iconic scene or shot for you?
I really like the scene where Kubo is dying and he drops the snow globe and says, It might have been the movie in my mind. No, seriously, my favorite.
Charles Foster Kane-san.
My favorite. I have to cheat a bit and pick 2 scenes. And I think it's because these two scenes kind of sum up my very rose-tinted look at this OVA. And it's when he goes to the school festival and he sees everyone in cosplay. It really is this sort of, it's a very weird comparison, though, for going with classic film. It makes me think of Dorothy and Munchkinland. Like, it's this very you're not in Kansas anymore sort of feeling.
Yes.
And I guess that's just the sort of feeling I love about being in the anime community, is this sort of everyone is dressed as someone other than themselves, and yet ironically are being totally authentic to themselves in doing it. And I love how he's like at first a little off-put, like he doesn't understand it, but he's so open to it. And they're like, this is what we do, this is our world, and we are sharing it. We're not gatekeeping it, we're not like being defensive. We are just bringing that joy to everyone, and if they like it or not is up to them. And that really just makes me happy. And my second scene is when they're waiting for the movies again, because I think the reason I love this OVA so much is it reminds me so much of the friendships I've made through the community, that seeing them sitting and just sort of talking with each other, and they're very casual, and even though it is surrounding this hobby they have, it seems so much like the conversations I've had with all of you when we've waited for movies, or when we've gone out to eat together, or just stayed up late at night talking to each other. It feels so human and authentic and real that it always warms my heart. So I have to pick those two scenes, and I guess because those are my favorite, that kind of explains my very romanticized view towards this film, which I'm glad I had that challenge, because I now will probably look at it in a much different way the inevitable next time I watch it.
Yeah, I think just to reiterate again, like I think a lot of those emotional beats that you outlined really do hit, and they hit very well. Just a lot of our issues are like the plot structure, but anyway, we've already gone over that.
Isn't one.
Yeah, well, yeah. But as for myself, probably my most iconic scene would be the one that's our one of our cover photos on Facebook, which is just Kubo holding all of those tapes and like books and stuff in his lap when he's sitting on the floor, and he can like barely see over it, because that's basically my life.
Yeah.
That's my aesthetic. 3,000,000%, for better or worse. That's me right there.
Well, it would be you if he was asleep.
That's true.
And covered in
Because
Covered in tapes, full of sleep.
Why is it so true? But it was that, and then I love the scenes whenever he's talking to the Otaku gang for the first time, and like learning about all their different passions and all that. I really love that scene. That's probably, whenever I think of Otaku no Video, I think of those sequences. Like none of the big silly moments, none of the sort of like bombastic moments, none of the portrait of an otaku stuff. Like I just think about those, small, genuine little interactions between him and his new friends, sort of bonding over anime crap, and very much in the vein of what you said, Sully, because it reminds me of what we do, like what we try and make this podcast to be, what we try and make our panels to be, and like all of the hanging out that we do online or in person and all that. It's fun to think about. It's a fun little representation there. All right, so with that being said, let's move on to Twitter questions, and we have a handful of them, all thanks to the immaculate Basil on Twitter, who is the convention head of Hamicon that we were most recently at, which, again, thank you, Basil, for having us out. We had so much fun at Hamicon, and we will be on this podcast talking about it soon. It might already be out, it might not be, but it will be on our podcast feed. We will be talking about Hamicon. So let's just get started. Some of these I'm going to skip over because we've already kind of talked about it. So one of these questions is the one that I've been thinking about the most. So in terms of the portrait of an otaku scenes, what kind of otaku do you guys think would show up if they were to do those in 2018? And I have a very clear list of the kinds of otaku that I assume would be in there. But, and I guess I'll go ahead and say my list, and then you guys can interject as well. I feel like we'd still have an anime person. We would have somebody who's way too into video games, especially like like retro gaming specifically. We'd have someone that's like super obsessed with politics. I think Bill and I know someone like that who would be like a very much a politics otaku. Someone who's super into like tech, like building PCs and like computer stuff. We'd have another cosplay person. We'd probably have another like cosplay photographer or like videographer or something like that. And then somebody who's into either like fan art or fan fiction. So that's what I think we would see. Any other particular otaku you think we would see in any of those sequences?
So specifically, you have a general game otaku. There would be one just for gacha game.
Oh my gosh.
Plays nothing but gacha. Always has their phone with a battery pack on. Plays all of them, and they're always posting screenshots of who they got, all the pulls they got. Always complaining about how many $1,000s they spent. Like this person never like actually works. They just have a insurmountable amount of money, but they have all the characters they want.
Fate Grand Order, Fire Emblem.
This is not making fun of Hazukari. It's totally making fun of Hazukari.
Every Idolmaster game.
Oh my gosh.
I think the problem with the video games one is there's too many subsets I think of. Like there's the esports person, there's the retro person, there's the person who only plays games from Japan and has never given up hope on the Vita and plays everything from NIS, America, Spike Chunsoft, Sega, and and plays visual novels from Manga Gamer all the time. So,
oh, we forgot the competitive Smash player. Like that would definitely be one.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
The species I'm trying to make extinct.
So,
I think
go ahead.
Well. I think you covered it pretty well, though.
What other anime production company would you like to see their life story animated like GAINAX was in Otaku no Video? For me, I would probably want to see, like, I don't know, maybe,
Trigger.
Yeah, maybe Trigger, but, like...
It's Trigger for you, I know it.
Yeah, I think
the thing is, I don't know what other studio has the background like GAINAX did. Granted, I say that just being super huge fans of theirs to begin with.
Yeah.
But now that we're doing more research on, the origins of Ghibli, I wouldn't mind maybe seeing a dramatization of like Takahata and Miyazaki doing their own thing and, growing the success of, Lupin and then moving on to their own movies. I think would be kind of interesting.
That would be interesting because I think that there's probably some parallels there between not necessarily exactly the same, but sort of the grassroots like nature of GAINAX is sort of how Ghibli came around too.
Yeah.
Even though it was a little bit like Takahata and Miyazaki were already like established professionals at that point, so it is a little different. But
for me personally, I would love a kind of series focused on either Toei animation or Madhouse.
Mm-hmm.
One, because Toei, especially in the early days, did really good work that was really beautiful to look at, especially their stuff in the 50s and 60s. I would say they were like the Walt Disney of anime at the time before Ghibli came along. And just they have this reputation of a nameless corporation, and so just to get to learn about some faces who formed Toei Animation, I would think would be really interesting. And also because Madhouse is such a pedigree with the amount of good shows that they've put out. Plus, we get a little bit about Satoshi Kon, which would make me happy.
Yeah,
I would just love to see any sort of coverage of like Satoshi Kon's anime career. Like that would be incredible.
And it would be done in the style of like Millennium Actress. Oh man,
Oh,
I want it. This will never exist, but I want it.
give it to me. A documentary that is just as long as it took them to make it about Redline. Just an 8-year-long like following Takeshi Koike around, just trying to get Redline made. Okay, so
You didn't ask me.
Oh, go ahead. But you're probably gonna say Tatsunoko.
No.
Jeez.
Look, I show my bias in that, yes, I'm a total Tatsunoko fanboy, but I also say it because, look, the story of Yoshitaka Amano.
Hey.
Was 15 and just doodling stuff in his notebook, and his best friend happened to live next door to Tatsunoko. Was like, hey, you want a tour? They saw his pictures and hired him like the next day. I want to see that like in a This Is Spinal Tap-esque documentary. I want to know.
I'd
I
watch
want to
that.
see that story hash out. Also, you talk about Toei's output in the 60s and 70s. I will combat that with Animal Treasure Island and Flying Ghost Ship.
Both of which I still need to see. I own that first one. I don't think the second one's in print.
It's not, but ooh boy, is it a doozy.
I've heard. I'm excited for that. So I think we probably, I'm gonna answer for all of us on this one. Would you like to see the GAINAX story from Otaku no Video until today animated? Absolutely.
I want to.
You like the latter half of their stuff?
Yep.
Can we have a whole section about what happens to them after Gurren Lagann is done? Because I want to know exactly what they do now.
They just sit and have debt. That's what they do.
Pretty much. So, like, I mean, the anime just skimmed over where they were wildly successful after One Fest and then just being successful and and going into space. But in reality, they just got like the IRS basically, like
Space IRS.
Yeah, the space IRS just show up and like take Takeda away, and that's the end of GAINAX. Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of, I guess, being an Anno fan, I think I would enjoy something a little more serious about maybe a look at his days on Nadia and then going into Evangelion.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it's a story we already kind of know, so maybe it doesn't need to be told.
Yeah.
Didn't he get his own show? The Blaze. Help me, Tobias.
Blue Blazes.
Thank you.
Yeah, but that's more of him and like as a college student.
Yeah. It's not so much. I mean, I guess that's true, and it's him and GAINAX as a whole. So if you liked the autobiographical aspect of Otaku no Video, definitely go check out Blue Blazes. Wihono. I believe it's still streaming on Viki. That's viki.com, a site that streams more J-drama stuff. It's definitely worth a watch if you're into GAINAX history and nerd history as well. They kind of talk about some of the early animation stuff.
So did you guys see those giant robot walking canes that are coming out?
No.
Wow, no. What is this?
Okay, so basically they are making a line of right now 3 walking canes based on 3 iconic classic super robots.
Okay.
Excuse me. We've got one for Mazinger Z and one for Tetsujin 28, and the other one I think is Getter Robo. And they are walking canes to try and appeal to elderly otaku. And Basil asks, what giant robot walking canes would you want to have? For me, I would want to have probably a Super Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann walking cane that is
it's not a cane, it's like a Gandalf staff.
Basically, yeah. And it pops out drills at any given time, but I'm never hurt by it, only my enemies. And it's like see-through blue, and like you can see like the entire universe inside of the cane, and basically it's not for walking, and basically it's not even a cane at all. It's just I want Super Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. Just give me that.
You just created a D&D like weapon for a D&D character.
I can do what I want.
Wow. All right, podcast over. All right, this is Third Impact Anime. We are good.
Signing off forever.
But anyway.
Sully, what giant robot walking cane do you want?
Would it be too predictable or in character for me to say, because I'm not a very into giant robot person, that I would want a Yatarwan cane or a Daidaikoron cane?
That's
I
the
will
dog mech, right?
What?
That's the dog mech, right?
That is the dog neck.
Hey, yeah, that'll work. That's fine.
Just the cane is shaped like his head, and you push a button, and little mini robots come out of it, just like in the show. And that's how he gets off my lawn.
Perfect. What about you, Tobias?
I'm thinking Gunbuster. Like your Ting and Toppa staff, it would be larger than a cane. Really, it's staff sized, and because of the shoulder pylons, it's really a trident, or I guess a bident. I guess you just have two sharp pylons that you can stab people with in case you ever need to.
Do you have to rip your shirt off to use it?
Don't you rip your shirt off whenever you go outside and walk with your cane?
I mean, not during the winter.
I mean, you were just in Alabama. You walked outside. You kind of had to rip your shirt off.
This is accurate.
Austin, I would like to change my answer. Since Mazinger Z versus Devilman is a thing, I think that technically makes Devilman a giant robot, and I want a Devilman cane.
You heard it here, folks.
Devilman's a
Devilman's a-
robot.
Devilman's a robot.
No, I want a. I want what's the robot from Ratatouille?
Oh yeah, linguini.
Linguini. I want a linguini.
Bill, I hope to goodness you have a serious answer.
Either I have a cane that can transform into any of the mechs from G Gundam, because they're so stereotypical that they're great, or if I can't get that, one based off the Mr. Smith Big O mecha robot.
You know, I had a feeling you were gonna go with the big. I had a feeling like that was gonna be yours.
Classic.
Yep. All right, so let's see what else we got here. Most of these are just him being a goofus.
You wanna go over some of those? We could go over those.
Now let me just read them. We may not. We'll just stop on one that we want to answer. So, who's your favorite otaku in those segments? We kind of covered that. It seems like we don't really have a favorite because they all make us feel uncomfortable. But if I had to pick one, it'd be the American one.
It's gonna be the American one because the logic in that is so absurd. Of just, I've decided just to move to Japan and sell all my Western possessions. Which, what if you know Japan? That wouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
I agree with that. My favorite is the man who tapes everything and watches nothing, because that's a very thin way of living. I think that man is possibly the wisest man to ever exist.
Gosh.
Or my second favorite is the guy who steals animation cells, because the way he talks and because he has sunglasses on, he reminds me of the main dude from School Rumble.
Got one here from a good friend Adam Dane. If it's called no video, why is there video?
Gosh
The
dang.
actual title is Otaku no Hero Academia.
Boku no video Otaku Day.
Otaku don't go to school, so that's why there is no academia.
That is very true.
Would you kickstart an anime adaptation on how Hamicon was founded? Absolutely. We should just go ahead and write that script as part of this podcast.
Yes.
But maybe that'll be a bonus episode where we come up with our fictionalized version of how Hamicon was founded. And I think it could get pretty ridiculous. I think it probably would involve Basil being rescued by some sort of a mysterious, like, tiger beast. And then the tiger beast basically making a pact with him that says, hey, I will give you, unlimited riches, but you have to run an anime con for at least 9 years. And then after the 9th year, you have to continue to invite this panel group called Third Impact Anime back to your convention and make sure they have lots of fun. Otherwise, I will eat all of your happiness.
Awesome no video.
I like the question of what otaku should be in segments today. I would say the tape guy, because the people in anime fandom, collectors are all around with their massive collections.
Yeah, not like we have anybody here. It's not like we know someone who does that.
What are our maiden names? If I had to pick a maiden name, I would be Honey Kisaragi.
I would definitely. I'm gonna change my name to Ano.
Maiden name.
Hey, Sully, speak into your microphone, not across the room.
Unfortunately, I've never been married, so I don't have a maiden name. But one day, I hope the right guy comes along, and then I can force him to do whatever I want, and then he'll have to take my name because I'm demanding and bossy. And probably the fact no one likes this is I am a horrific, evil weeaboo who. Wait, I'm sorry. What was the question again?
Wow.
You answered it. How was it to live the con life with another Austin? It was strange, especially considering that Austin was Austin Tyndall, the voice actor for Kaneki Ken in Tokyo Ghoul. And it was weird that I was just looking over there in the same room and he was just chomping down on a slice of pizza. And I'm like, why am I here? I feel so unimportant in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, being official guest at a con is weird. But it's a good weird, but it's weird.
Yep.
Does Otaku no Video still hold up? I would say yes, but a caveated yes.
Yeah, I think we kind of covered it in the cast. At least from my perspective, it's definitely. I think it's worth having. It's worth seeing. It's worth noting as a notable work. But there are some issues, and there's some things, some ways that it doesn't really hold up to modern.
And Basil also asks for our social security numbers and banking routing numbers, which we're not going to give out on this podcast, but I will DM them.
Yeah.
I will DM them to everyone who follows us on Twitter.
No, everyone's number is 8675309.
Hey, that's a classic anime reference.
It is indeed.
All right, because I'm
555.
because I'm sick of reading all of these, and I think we've given Basil enough credence for now. I think that we can probably wrap this episode up. What do you guys think?
Sounds right to me.
Sounds
Cool.
solid.
Because we've gone on for way too long about this topic, but I think this was a really good episode. I'm really proud of you guys. I think this was a lot of fun. So, Sully, where can people find you? Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Calvacun, and I get tired of spelling it out, so just, look at your own damn self.
Wow. Do something for yourself for once.
That's a little hostile, so I'm going to go over to Bill. Bill, how can people find you on Twitter?
Just WB Foreman 999, where you'll read such great questions of the purpose of Facebook is just to remember people's birthdays, and that's its sole purpose at this point.
Well done. And Tobias, what about you?
I'm on Twitter at Reverend_Tobias. And when my phone works, I post, but when it doesn't, I don't.
And as
See,
for
that was
myself,
mean too. Why didn't you get on him?
because that wasn't mean. It was just matter of fact.
I get tired of having to spell mine out, and I don't know how to people on Twitter.
I said the underscore. That technically counts as spelling. And you know what? I gotta phonetically spell everything at work, and I hate it. I'm done.
Okay, I think we're all getting tired. So
I'm just ranting about work, man. Like I'm really getting tired of people at work. This is.
We need to give Sully his milk because we need his bedtime. So let's wrap it up.
I swear to God, if you make a grandma joke, I'm gonna kill you.
I'm not going to say a word. I'm just going to sit here and mind my own business and tell people that you can follow me on Twitter at Bebop Shock. That is Bebop as in Cowboy Bebop and Shock as in Bioshock. And for all of your Third Impact related content whatevers that you may want to be looking for, you can follow us on Twitter at TI_anime. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Third Impact Anime. You can find this podcast and other wonderful episodes. I think we're almost to our 50th episode, which is very exciting, guys. 50 episodes. That's pretty awesome. Well, yeah, about 50 episodes.
Can we have a cake?
And we can try. Yeah, so if you guys want to listen to our podcast, you can find us on Google Play and Stitcher and Player FM and iTunes and YouTube and all that stuff. and wherever it is that you are listening to it right now, because you have already found it and made it to the end of this quite long episode. But we thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys so much for sticking around with us and hearing all of the crap we have to say about anime-related stuff on the regular. And this has been Austin and Tobias and Sully and Bill from Third Impact Anime signing off. Have a otaku-tastic evening.
I hate you.
We're ending it on I hate you.
愛する人を捨てて駆け抜けるもの輝く未来信じ夢を託して T シャツ濡らす汗男の勲章涙止まらないぜときめき忘れないぜ心の流れゆく時を超え生まれ変わるさオタクと呼ばれる時がいつか来る青春の瞬間をつなぎ止めるぜ邪魔はさせない我が道行くぜ戦え戦え戦え戦え戦えオタキ永遠に変わらない俺の信念振り向きはしないそれがオタク道人生の何もかも捨てちまったぜ目指すは世界I'll be the greatest man 戦え戦え戦え戦え